Now let's look at the qualitative characteristic of financial information. Earlier, we used to discuss the objective of financial reporting. In that, we agree that the objective of financial reporting is to provide the financial information that is useful to the resource providers in making decisions regarding providing resources to an entity. In that, for a particular financial information that an entity communicate to be useful, it should have some of the qualities. And basically, we divide these qualities into two, the fundamental and enhancing qualities. So in fact, this is what you've been learning since your A levels. So there we have the fundamental qualitative characteristics, relevance and faithful representation, while the enhancing qualitative characteristics, we have the comparability, timeliness, verifiability, and understandability. So this enhancing qualitative characteristic will enhance the usefulness of the financial information. Now let's take the fundamental qualitative characteristics and see what is the content of that. The first one is relevance. The relevance means it is capable of making a difference in users' decision. The relevance means it's capable of making a difference in users' decision. For a particular information to be capable in making a difference in the user's decision, it should have a predictive value and also the confirmatory value. And that particular information has to be material. So what do you mean by this predictive value and confirmatory value? You know, when we provide the information, based on the financial information, what we communicate through the financial statement, the investors or the resource providers should be able to make some prediction. Say for an example, by looking at the current year's sale, the user must be able to predict, the investors must be able to predict the future sales. And also by looking at the current year's profit, the investors should be able to predict the future profit. And that's what we call the predictive value of an information. A relevant information is an information which has the quality of predictive value. Based on the financial information, it must be provide the investor with some predictive value. Then similarly, it should have to have a confirmatory value. What do you mean by the confirmatory value? In that, like you predict the future sales based on the current year sales, when you were in the previous financial year, you would have predicted the current year sales. For example, when you were in the reporting period 2017-18, you would have predicted the sales of 2018-19. In that, you make a prediction when you were in the previous year. But once you receive the current year's financial statements, you can see to what extent that your prediction has worked. In that, you can confirm the prediction that you had made. So that is what we call the confirmatory value. So you have make a prediction. So once you get the actual information, you can compare the actual information with the prediction, and then you can see to what extent that you had predicted the things. And depending on that, you can think of the future predictions, what you are going to make. And that is about the confirmatory value. So a particular information to be relevant, it should have the qualities of the predictive value and the confirmatory value. And obviously, the information to be relevant, it has to be material. So it must be a material information. So as far as this materiality is concerned, so it is not something applicable across the industry. It is applicable to a particular entity. So therefore, we call it's an entity specific value. It's an entity specific thing. So depending on the bottom line depending on the top line of the business, depending on the sales value, depending on the profitability. So the entity would decide what information is materiality. So it's an entity specific judgment. So we should communicate the material information, and those would be the information which can make a difference in the user's decision. So it's all about making decisions, and in order to facilitate that, the information has to be relevant. On the other hand, the information should be faithfully represented. So as far as this faithful representation is concerned, the faithful representation means it purports the phenomenon what it purports. So it represents the phenomenon what it purports to represent. The faithful representation means it represents the phenomena what it purports to represent. In other words, we can say uh, it should represent the financial information what you provide should represent the substance what it purports to represent. That's what the faithful representation. For a particular information to be faithfully represented, it has to be complete. It must be complete. The completeness is a must. For example, when it comes to a PPE information, if you refer to the statement of financial position, there you see the PPE value is there. So the PP cost, accumulated depreciation, and the carrying amount. But it's a very little information, right? For that particular information to be faithfully represented, uh, kind of additional information needs to be provided. And it is what is ensured by way of the notes to the financial statement. So if you go to the PPE note, in the notes, you can have some more information on the PPE. So like what are the different types of asset, the PP items that you have, what are the additions that you have, and what are the disposals that you did, and also what are the revaluation that you did. Likewise, you can have a comprehensive understanding about the PP asset, what the entity would have. So not only that, it also provides information about the significant policies that you had applied with respect to the PPE. In the notes, we give information about the policies, like the depreciation policy, we have the revaluation. So what are the uh, policies that we had applied, what are the inputs that we had used, likewise. So those information would be helpful to faithfully represent a particular information. So the completeness is there. And also, the information to be faithfully represented, it has to be neutral. The information must be neutral. That is, in the sense, you are not biased either towards the management or towards the investor. That is, in the sense, you are not going to take the position of any of the parties. So you are not going to favor the management. In that sense, you are not going to show some inflated profit figures. So, and some overstated profit figures, you are not going to show that. Or in order to favor the investors, you are not going to overstate the profit. So you are not going to do that because you are taking a neutral position. And also, the information to be faithfully represented, it has to be free from errors. To the maximum possible, it should be error free. So for a particular information to be faithfully represented, it has to be complete, neutral, it is unbiased. You are not biased towards the management. You are not going to favor the management and manipulate the information. And you are not going to favor the shareholders and manipulate the information. And also the information is free from errors. That is what the faithful representation. तर අපි මෙතන කතා කරේ ෆන්ඩමෙන්ටල් ක්වොලිටේටිව් කැරක්ටරිස්ටික් සම්බන්ධයෙන්. එතනදී අපි ඇග්‍රී වුණා යම්කිසි ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එකක් යූස්ෆුල් වෙන්න නම්, යම්කිසි ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එකක් යූස්ෆුල් වෙන්න නම් ඒ ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එක රෙලෙවන්ට් සහ ෆේත්ෆුලි රිප්‍රසන්ට් කරන්න ඕන. ඒතර ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එකක් රෙලෙවන්ස් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? ඒ ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එකේ, ඒ ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එකේ යම් යම් ක්වොලිටිස් තියෙනවා. ඒ ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් එක මත බදනම් වෙලා යම්කිසි ප්‍රෙඩික්ෂන් එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට සරල උදාහරණයක් විදිහට current year profit figure එක බලලා financial statements වල future profit එකක් forecast කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. So it's a must. So If that information is capable of doing that, yes, the predictive value is there. ඒ වගේම තමයි information එක තියෙන්න ඕනේ confirmatory value එකක්. Based on when you were in the previous reporting period, අපි ඒතකොට previous reporting period එකේ ඉද්දි previous year එකේ profit එක බලලා current year profit එක forecast කරන්න ඇති. ඒතකොට එතනදිත් අපිට පුළුවන් current year financial statement ලැබුණාට පස්සේ ඒ actual information compare කරන්න අපේ prediction එකත් එක්ක. එතනින් අපිට confirm කරගන්න පුළුවන් to what extent that we have our prediction is correct. So depending on that අපිට අපේ අනාගතේ කරන්න යන predictions සම්බන්ධ decision models අපිට තීරණය කරන්න පුළුවන්, වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම තමයි යම් කිසි තොරතුරක් relevant වෙන්න නම් එතන materiality එක තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Information should be material. එතකොට materiality කියන එක decide වෙන්නේ entity එකත් එක්ක. entity එකේ තියෙන top lines, bottom lines කියන්නේ sales figures, profit figures මේවා base කරගෙන තමයි අපි prediction එක මේවා base කරගෙන තමයි අපි materiality decide කරන්නේ. ඒත් එක්කම faithfully represent වෙන්න නම් අපි කියනවා the information, the financial information should represent the phenomena what it purports to represent. The financial information විසින් ඉදිරිපත් කළ යුතු ඒ phenomena එක, ඒ චිත්‍රය ඒ විදිහට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒකේ substance එක ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න ඕනලු. කියන්නේ යථාර්ථවාදී චිත්‍රයක් නිර්මාණය කරන්න ඕනේ. එතනදී අපි කියනවා යම්කිසි තොරතුරක් faithfully represent වෙන්න නම්, විශ්වාසනීය නියෝජනයක් වෙන්න නම් ඒ information එක complete වෙන්න. ඒතර උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපිට PP සම්බන්ධයෙන් statement of financial position එකේ තියෙනවා cost information එක, accumulated depreciation සහ carrying amount. සමහර විට carrying amount එක විතරක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් investor කෙනෙක් විදිහට, resource provider කෙනෙක් විදිහට ඒ information එක ගැන විතරක් බලලා අපිට තීරණයක් ගන්න බෑ. එතකොට අපි තීරණ ගැනීමේදී අපිට predict කරන්න වෙනවා. එතකොට එතනදී අපිට some more information is needed. ඒ නිසා අපිට සිද්ධ වෙයි අපේ notes වලට ගිහිල්ලා එතන තියෙන information consider කරන්න. කියන්නේ PP note එකට යන්න පුළුවන්. ඒත් එක්කම PP වලට අදාළ significant policies වලට refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට මේ ආකාරයෙන් complete information එකකින් තමයි අපිට යම්කිසි තීරණයක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. So therefore the completeness has to be there. And also the neutrality. You are not going to be biased. අපි කාටවත් පක්ෂපාතී වෙන්නේ නැහැ. management එකටවත් investors-ලටවත්. මේ තමයි ව්‍යාපාරයක ප්‍රධානම වැදගත්ම පාර්ශ්ව දෙක, the management and the investors. We are not going to be biased. අපි යම්කිසි පාර්ශ්වයකට bias වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒතකොට bias වුණොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? අපි තියෙන information අපි manipulate කරනවා. අපේ තියෙන information manipulate කරලා අපි වැරදි චිත්‍රයක් communicate කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපි management එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් සුබවාදී චිත්‍රයක් create කරන්න ඕන නම් investors-ලට අපිට පුළුවන් අපේ financial information, අපේ financial statement manipulate කරන්න, වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. financial statements වෙනස් කරලා වැඩි ලාභදායී තත්වයක් අපිට පෙන්වන්න කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර එතනදී අපි bias වෙනවා management එකට. ඒ වගේම තමයි අපිට bias වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපේ investors-ලටත්. ඒතර investors-ලට මේ ආයතනය ගැන හොඳ චිත්‍රයක් හැදෙන්න, එතකොට ව්‍යාපාරයේ හොඳ share price එකක් generate වෙන්න අපිට පුළුවන් investors-ලට bias වෙලා තොරතුරු දෙන්න. එතකොට අපි එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ. We are expected to be neutral in providing the financial information. ඒ වගේම තමයි information අපි provide කරන error තියෙන්න බෑ. It should be free from errors to the maximum possible, right? Then we talk about the enhancing qualitative characteristics. So it will enhance the usefulness of the information by way of influencing the relevance and faithful representation. It will influence the relevance and faithful representation. Thereby, this enhancing qualitative characteristics tend to be useful. So they tend to impact the usefulness of the financial information. So as far as the comparability is concerned, we call it, there must be a comparability across the entities and across the time. The comparability has two aspects. The comparability over time, comparability across the entities. Say for an example, if you take a particular business organization, let's say You're taking the healthcare industry. If you take the financial statements of what do you call that, the Lanka hospitals, it must be comparable with that of the uh, Asiri PLC. So the Asiri Hospitals PLC. So it is what we call the comparability across the entities. So you can compare the financial statement with the same participants or the same players in the industry. And also the financial statement must be comparable across the time. In that, the financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2019 must be comparable with that of the financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2020 of the same entity. So if you take the ASRI PLC, the financial statement what they would prepare for the year ended 31st March 2019 must be comparable with the financial statements that they prepare with the year ending 31st March 2020. So that is what the comparability over time, right? In the same entity over time. Then we have the verifiability. We call it the knowledgeable and independent observers could reach consensus, but not necessarily complete agreement that a depiction is faithful representation. So the knowledgeable and independent parties could reach consensus that, so it is consensus in the sense it is not 100% agreement, but it's a agreement to a certain extent. So they would agree to a certain extent, but not to the 100%. So if the knowledgeable and independent observers can reach a kind of reasonable consensus, that is what the verifiability. So for an example, if I am to take an example, so if you have, let's say, inventory value. So inventory must be carried at the lower of cost and net realizable value. And the entity, in their policies, they would say that the lower figure is the cost, so therefore the inventory is presented at the reporting date at its cost. Then when you look at the notes, there you could find some of the cost information of the inventory and also some of the information about the quantities of the inventory. Then if you do a kind of multiplication of the cost by the quantities, then you would be able to arrive at a particular valuation. And that particular valuation must be somewhat similar to the valuation that you see in the statement of financial position. Similarly, if you take PPE items, so in the business, the PPE would have been revalued to its fair value. When it comes to this revaluation, if you are given information that is relating to this revaluation, let's say that the entity has revalued a kind of uh, land, then when you are going to revalue that land, so what was the inputs, what was the information that you had made use of, like what was the uh, land values of the near buildings, of the nearby lands, what is the value of the nearby lands, and also what is the market price, the average market price of the lands in that particular area. Likewise, if some kind of information is there, then by based on this information you can think that so how they had undertaken this revaluation. So then you can reasonably agree on the valuation of the land. So likewise, it's about the verifiability and also the timeliness. So as far as timeliness is concerned, we are much committed to provide the information on time. So with this respect, the certain measures have been taken by the business community, like initiatives like interim financial reporting and the publishing financial reports within like 3 months time. At the end of the reporting period, within 3 months time, they take uh, they publish these annual reports. So all these initiatives are there to ensure the timeliness. So the information is available at the time of making decisions. The understandability. On the other side, we believe that The people with a reasonable understanding on the business and accounting, the financial information should make sense to them. So that is about the understandability. So in order to ensure that, we do lots of things. No, we do the classification, characterize and present information clearly and concisely, things as such. Ne? When it comes to the asset, we classify them like current and non-current, liability same. Even when it comes to the statement of profit or loss, we do the classification like the classification of expenses based on the kind of function, things as such. So those would help in understanding. And also we try to provide in the face of the statement of financial position and the statement of profit or loss very concise information, very summarized and clear information. So it's about to ensure the understandability. මෙතනදී අපි කතා කරා enhancing qualitative characteristics සම්බන්ධයෙන්. එතනදී අපි කතා කරනවා comparability, සංසන්දනාත්මක භාවය. ඒතර මේ සංසන්දනාත්මක භාවය ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් තත්ත්වයන් දෙකක් තියෙනවා. එකක් entities අතර සංසන්දනය කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක අපි කියනවා comparability across the entities and comparability over time. ඒ වගේම තමයි යම්කිසි ආයතනයක financial year දෙකක් අතරත් මේ comparability එක කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. compare කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට අපි යම්කිසි industry එකක් ගත්තොත්, එතකොට අපි ගත්තොත් health care industry එක, අපිට පුළුවන් ආසිරි hospitals වල financial statements compare කරන්න ලංකා hospital එක්ක. So it's a level playing field. එතකොට යාලා එකම තත්ත්වයේ ඉන්න entities දෙකක් එතන comparison එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම තමයි අපි ගත්තොත් ලංකා hospital වල current year එකේ financial information, financial statements අපිට compare කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ පහුගිය අවුරුද්දේ financial statements එක්ක. ඒකට එතනක් තියෙනවා comparability over time. ඊට පස්සේ අපි කතා කරොත් verifiability. අපි කියනවා එතන ව්‍යාපාරයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් දැනුමක් සහ ස්වාධීන පාර්ශවයන්ට පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ ව්‍යාපාරයේ විසින් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තියෙන financial information සම්බන්ධයෙන් යම්කිසි තත්වයකට එකඟ වීමක් කරන්න 100%ක් එකඟ වෙන්න නෙමෙයි. නමුත් මේ යම්කිසි තොරතුරක් විශ්වාසනීයව ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තියෙනවා කියන එක සැලකිය යුතු මට්ටමකට එකඟ වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගත්තොත් අපේ තියෙනවා statement of financial position එකේ inventory value එකක්. ඒතර යම්කිසි inventory value එකක් තියෙනවා. අපි දන්නවා inventory එක cost or net realizable value එකෙන් අඩු වගේට තමයි වාර්තා කරන්නේ. ඒතර අපි හිතුවොත් cost එකට දැන් වාර්තා කරලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒතර අපි additional information එහෙම නැත්නම් notes වලට ගිහින් බැලුවොත් ඔන්න මේ inventory වල තියෙන එක එක inventory categories වල cost එක දීලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ inventory categories වල තියෙන quantities දීලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙනම් අපි ඒක multiply කරොත් cost එක quantity එකකින් අපිට පුළුවන් වෙයි ලබා ගන්න මොකක්ද appropriate valuation එකක්. appropriate valuation එකක් අපිට ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට අපිට agree වෙන්න පුළුවන් statement of financial position වල දක්වලා තියෙන value එක සම්බන්ධයෙන්. ඒ වගේම තමයි. ඒතකොට යම්කිසි වත්කමක් PP item එකක් අපි හිතමු revalue කරා කියලා. ඒතකොට revalue කරලා ඔන්න value එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා market price එක කියලා. එතකොට අපි බැලුවොත් notes වල මේ fair value එක සිදු කිරීමට අදාළව යම් තොරතුරු දීලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතකොට land එකක් වගේ value කරනකොට අපි ඒ land එකට ආසන්නයේ තියෙන lands වල valuation ගන්නවා. එතකොට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් land එක පිහිටලා තියෙන ප්‍රදේශයේ යන average market prices ගන්නවා. ඒතකොට මේ වගේ information මත base වෙලා අපි fair value එකක් derive කරනවා. market value එකක් derive කරනවා. ඒතකොට මේ වගේ additional information අපිට දීලා තිබුණොත් notes වල අපිට පුළුවන් වෙයි සැලකිය යුතු මට්ටමකට අර තියෙන valuation එකට ආසන්න value එකක් generate කර ගැනීම තුළ අපිට agree වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි මේ depiction of the PP value is faithfully represented. So therefore verifiability එක faithful representation එකට affect කරනවා. ඒ වගේම තමයි තොරතුරු timeliness තියෙන්න ඕනේ. එතනදී අපි කියනවා ඒ තොරතුරු තීරණ ගන්න වෙලාවට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ නිසා අපි lot of measures මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් අරන් තියෙනවා. like interim financial reporting වලට ගිහින් තියෙනවා. අපි මාස 3කට සැරයක් financial statement publish කරන්න. මාස 6කට සැරයක්. ඒ වගේම අවුරුද්දක අදාළ financial statement අවුරුද්ද ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ඉයර් එක ඉවර වෙලා මාස 3කින් වගේ පබ්ලිෂ් කරන්න. මේ ඔක්කොම efforts අපි ගන්නේ timeliness එක ensure කරන්න. ඒ වගේම තමයි understandability will ensure by taking lot of measures. අපි තොරතුරු classify කරලා ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. තොරතුරු සාරාංශගතව ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ විවිධ measures ගන්නවා අපි understandability ensure කරන්න. එතකොට අපි මේවා words වලින් explain කරලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර තැන්වල notes වල අපි additional information දීලා තියෙනවා. මේ සියල්ලකින්ම අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ understandability ensure කරන්න. ව්‍යාපාරයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් reasonable understanding එකක්, accounting සම්බන්ධයෙන් reasonable understanding එකක් තියෙන කෙනෙක්ට financial information should make sense. Financial statement should make sense. So depending on that, depending on the qualitative characteristics, now let's look at a particular activity. In this activity, it is expected which of the qualitative characteristics of financial information are applicable in the following situation. So when it comes to the following activity, and there can be more than one qualitative characteristic, more than one qualitative characteristic that is linked with the given situation. But you would see one characteristic as more dominant, while there would be several other related characteristics as well. but අපිට අවස්ථා කිහිපයක් දීලා තියෙනවා. එතනදී අපිට අහනවා මේ එක එක අවස්ථාවට අදාළ වෙන qualitative characteristics මොනවද කියලා. එතකොට අපිට ගොඩක් අවස්ථාවලදී පෙනේ එක qualitative characteristic එකක් more prominently ඊට අමතරව තව qualitative characteristics තියෙන්න පුළුවන් මේකට link වෙච්චි. Let's have a look at that. The assets are revalued at their fair values and recognized in the financial statement. If you provide the current information of the asset compared to the historical cost, what would be the quality that it affect the most? If you provide the latest or the current cost information, the current information, current values of the asset rather than the historical cost, it will affect on what? It will affect on the relevance the most. Relevance the most. So therefore, in this situation, more prominently we can say it will affect the relevance. So it will affect the relevance. Then in the second instance, you can see the asset acquired under a lease are recognized in the lessee's financial statement. If you recognize the lease that is acquired under the asset that is acquired under a lease in the lessee's financial statement, it will affect what quality the most? You are trying to represent the phenomena what it purports to represent, isn't it? So acquiring an asset under a lease is quite, if you look at the substance, it is like an acquiring an asset under a loan facility. So therefore, in substance, you are trying to show the substance. So therefore, it is something to do with the faithful representation the most. And also, on the same time, it will affect on the relevance as well. Because if you simply based on the legal form and if you wait to recognize this asset up until you get the legal ownership, so in that particular case, it will affect on the relevance. So in fact, this is a material piece of information. Acquiring an asset under a lease is a material form of information. If you had not recognized that, so probably it will impact on the relevance as well. So therefore, it is faithful representation and relevance. In the third instance, to be inconsistent with the industry practices, the valuation basis of year-end inventory is changed to weighted average from FIFO. So to be inconsistent with the industry practices, you have changed your inventory valuation policy from FIFO, which has been used in prior periods. If that happens, so what would be the quality that affect the most? So it is in fact the comparability. It affects the comparability to the most. And also at the same time, it will affect on the relevance as well. So it will affect on the relevance as well. So it will make the things comparable, then it tend to be more relevant even. So every player in the industry would be using the same valuation basis. So therefore, it will impact on the relevance as well. So you can take the what do you call that? The comparability, and at the same time, you can think of the relevance as well. Relevance as well. So this information, the piece of information, would be relevant. Then the measurement of the carrying amount of year-end inventory presented in the financial statement based on its cost. So inventory must be presented at the lower of cost and the net realizable value. So in that sense, in this particular case, the cost would have been the lower figure. So therefore, inventory presented in the financial statement based on its cost. If that is the case, then what happens is it will affect more prominently on the verifiability. You can verify that. You can verify the carrying amount of the inventory. And on the same time, it will affect on the kind of faithful representation as well. So the verifiability is linked to the faithful representation. So therefore, it will affect on the faithful representation as well. So the verifiability is there as long as you can verify a particular information. So that particular depiction would be a faithful representation. So therefore, the faithful representation must also be there. Right. Now let's take on the elements of financial statements. So by now we have discussed about the objective of financial reporting and the qualitative characteristics of financial information. Then we are going to take on the third aspect. It's about the elements of financial statements. When it comes to these elements of financial statement, so the new conceptual framework, this is an element where it get affected the most. So in that sense, the new conceptual framework has come up with a kind of more refined definition for the asset, liabilities, equity, income and expenses. Earlier we used to have a definition as per the conceptual framework of 2010, but now from the 2018 conceptual framework, the previous definitions has been refined and they have made it comprehensive, and at the same time they have made it simple. So it is simple yet comprehensive definition is provided on the elements of financial statements. You can see there are some similarities and as well as some differences are there. So we'll investigate what those significant features and what the differences from the previous conceptual framework likewise. When it comes to the asset, so we used to define asset as a resource controlled by the entity as a result of past transaction from which the future economic benefits are expected to flow to the entity. But in the new definition, we still identify the asset is the present economic resource controlled by the entity. It is there. The present economic resource is there. And as a result of past event, that is also there. Then what is clearly missing? They have given up. The new conceptual framework has given up on the future economic benefit that is expected to flow to the entity, or we call it expected future economic benefits they have get rid from. In the new definition, we do not have that. So the thinking behind this is the conceptual framework, the IASB had come into the mindset that the asset is the present economic resource. Asset is about the present economic resource. It is not the ultimate inflow of future economic benefit. It is not the ultimate inflow of future economic benefit, but rather it is the present economic resource. That is what the emphasis is on, right? They want to make sure that it is about the present economic resource, and that is what that's. එතකොට මේ definition එකෙන් අපිට පේන ප්‍රධාන තත්වයක් තමයි asset එකක් කියන්නේම අපි කියනවා present economic resource එකක්. එතකොට කලින් asset එක ගොඩක් focus එක දීලා තිබුණා previous definition එකෙන් future economic benefit, expected future economic benefits. But අලුත් definition එකට අනුව focus එක තියෙන්නේ asset එකක් කියන්නේ present economic resource එකක්. ඒක economic resource එකක්. તો resource එක තමයි ඇත්තටම asset එක වෙන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒකේ තියෙන future economic benefit නෙමෙයි. expected future economic benefits නෙමෙයි. ඇත්තටම ඒ future economic benefits තියෙනවද නැද්ද අඩුද වැඩිද මේ කියන දේ අපි සැලකිල්ලට ගන්නේ recognition එකේදී. ඒක recognition එකේ consider කළ යුතු දෙයක්. නැතුව මේ definition එකේ ඒක consider කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපි මේ expected future economic benefits කියන එක ඉවත් කරලා තියෙනවා asset එක definition එකේ. It is no longer there. The asset is all about the present economic resource. So the control aspect is there, the past event is there, but not the expected future cash inflows. Similarly, the liability. So we still have the present obligation. The present obligation is there and the past event is there, but we do not focus on the outflow of expected future economic benefit. The outflow of expected future economic benefit, we have given up on that. Again, it made it very clear, the new conceptual make it very clear that the liability is all about the present obligation or the obligation to transfer an economic resource. That's what the liability. So the liability means the obligation to transfer an economic resource. It is not about the expected outflow of future economic benefits. The resources embodying future economic benefits, they have given up on that, and it is a matter to be concerned in the recognition, right? That is what the thinking. So whether this expected cash outflow is there or not, so it is a matter to be concerned in the recognition, but not in the definition. So the definition itself, it highlights the liability is about the present obligation to transfer economic resource. So the emphasis is on the economic resource. Equity, the definition remains same. It's always the residual interest of asset. Then another significant feature is when it comes to this economic resource, they provide a kind of definition on what is an economic resource. As far as this economic resource is concerned, the new conceptual framework defines that economic resource is a right that has the potential to produce economic benefit. Economic resource is necessarily a right that has the potential to produce economic benefit. It is capable or it can produce some future economic benefit. That is what the asset means. In that, when you carefully go through the statement of financial position, as per this particular definition of the economic resource, basically you can categorize the assets into two types. So based on the definition on the economic resource, you can put the asset into two categories. So the one category is there are some asset which is necessarily right, but with that particular right, it corresponds to an obligation to another entity. Say for an example, if you take an asset like trade receivables, what is that? The trade receivable, it gives you the right to receive cash. It gives you the right to receive cash, no? Trade receivable. Then if you look at the other party to the contract, what is the situation? The other party is having an obligation like trade payables. It is trade receivable to you, but it is trade payable to the other party. So therefore, it is a corresponding obligation is there to the another party. And on the same time, if you take an example like right to receive goods or services. For example, let's say that you have a kind of prepaid expense. Let's say prepaid electricity expense. It's a kind of asset to you. Then if you look at the corresponding party, right? For the corresponding party, it's a obligation. They have an obligation. They have the prepaid electricity income. Prepaid electricity income. So if you think about the electricity supplier, so for that supplier, it is a prepaid electricity income. So therefore, in their statement of financial position, it's a liability. So therefore, there can be some asset which gives you a right that correspond to an obligation to another party. On the other hand, there can be some asset, it gives you the right, but it is not correspond to an obligation to another party. For example, rights over a physical object. So if you have a PP item, then you have a right over a physical object. If you purchase a motor vehicle, so the legal ownership is there, it gives you a right, right? But the problem is, not the problem, but in fact, the other side, it does not gives an obligation to another party. There's no obligation to another party. And also, if you take asset like the kind of copyright, it's a right to you. It's a right to you. But there's no obligation to the other party. So that would be the detailed examination of these economic resources. So some would give rights which correspond to an obligation to another party. Some gives you the right that does not correspond to an obligation to another party. So that's how it goes. තොට අපි economic resource කියන එක තව crucial feature එකක් මේ අලුත් conceptual framework එකේ තියෙන. තොට ඒ අලුත් conceptual framework එකෙන් මේ economic resource කියන එකට definition එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒත් අපිට හම්බුණා මේක asset සහ liabilities වලදී විශේෂයෙන්ම asset වලදී present economic resource කියන කාරණාව. තොට ඒ definition එකට අනුව economic resource එකක් කියන්නේ right එකක්. It is a right that has a potential to produce economic benefits. ඒ right එකෙන් තියෙනවලු හැකියාවක් අනාගත ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිලාභ බිහි කරන්න. එතකොට මේ right එක අපි තවදුරටත් විශ්ලේෂණය කරලා බැලුවොත් statement of financial position එකේ තියෙන assets consider කරලා එතකොට අපිට පේනවා සමහර assets තියෙනවා. ඒ asset එකට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා තියෙන අනිත් party එකට corresponding entity එකට corresponding party එකට liability එකක් create වෙලා තියෙනවලු. obligation එකක් තියෙනවලු. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගමු trade receivable කියන එක. අපි දන්නවා ඒක asset එකක්. There it gives us the right to receive cash නේ. The corresponding party, it gives you the corresponding party would give the trade payables. එතකොට ඒකට සම්බන්ධ අනිත් පාර්ශ්වයට මේක trade payable එකක්. අපි විකුණපු නිසා අපිට ඒක trade receivable වුණා. ඒක අනිත් පාර්ටි එක ණයට ගත්තා නම් ඒක trade payable එකක් වෙනවනේ. එතකොට ඒ වගේම තමයි අපි කන්සිඩර් කරොත් අපි ගාව තියෙනවා prepaid expense එකක්. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට prepaid electricity expense. ඒතර අපිට ඒක asset එකක් නේ. We have the right to receive service for the next financial year even. But if you look at the supplier of the electricity, in his statement of financial position, that is a obligation. So it is in fact the prepaid income. Prepaid income is a obligation. So therefore, the right what you have would correspond to an obligation to another party. So that is how one part of the one category of this right. While the other category is, it gives you the right, but that does not correspond to an obligation. So අපිට right එකක් තියෙනවා. හැබැයි අනිත් පාර්ශ්වයට obligation එකක් create වෙන්නේ නැල්ලු. ඒතර උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගමු PP item එකක්. අපි PP item එකක් මිලට ගන්නවා. PP item එකක් මිලට ගත්තාම මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ? We have a right over a physical object. අපිට physical objective එකට අයිතියක් තියෙනවා. හැබැයි අනිත් පාර්ශ්වයට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් බැඳීමක් නැහැ. ඒතර අපි තුන් වාහනේ විකුණපු පාටි එක කියලා. ඒතර වාහනේ විකුණපු පාටි එකට එහෙම බැඳීමක් නැහැ. එයා තමන්ගේ revenue එක recognize කරලා ඇති. ඒ වගේම තමයි අපි හිතුවොත් copyright එකක්. ඒතර අපිට copyright එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒතර එතනදී අපිට right එකක් තියෙනවා to use the intellectual property, but the corresponding party එකට කිසිම liability එකක් නැහැ. එතකොට එතන තියෙන right එකේ ස්වභාවය තමයි it does not correspond to an obligation. එතකොට rights ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් assets ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් අපිට කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදා ගන්න පුළුවන්. එකක් right that correspond to an obligation to another party, the right that do not correspond to an obligation to another party. Then if you think about how this economic resources come into existence. So it may come into existence by different ways. For example, the rights can be established by way of a contract. The classic example is trade receivable. In a trade receivable, there is an agreement between you and the customer. You and the customer. So therefore, it's a trade receivable is a result of a contract. If you think about a kind of operating license, so in order to operate a business, you need to have the operating license. You have to get it from a government body. Government body. So therefore, it's a matter of legislation. So you have the right. So that is your trading license, but it has come into existence because of a matter of legislation. And also, it can arise as a result of legal ownership of a physical object. For example, you may acquire motor vehicle. If you acquire a motor vehicle, you would have the legal ownership. Then you would have the right. You would have the right. So it's by way of legal ownership of a physical. If you acquire an asset under a lease, then what is the case? You have a right, but it's a by way of contract. The contract එකක් විදිහට තමයි ඇති වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. You and the leasing company had entered into a kind of contract. As a result of that, you have get the right of use asset. Then even in some extreme circumstances, the right may come into existence because of the constructive obligation of another party. තවත් සමහර අවස්ථාවල රයිට් එකක් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්ලු අනිත් පාර්ශවයට තියෙන සම්මුතික බැඳීමක් හේතු කොටගෙන. අනිත් පාර්ශවය තුල තියෙන සම්මුතික බැඳීමක්. So if I am to give you an example, let's take example like this. You are a manufacturing entity. You have machineries, right? You are a manufacturing entity, so therefore you have some machineries. For the component of this machine, you may be purchasing it from a particular supplier. The component that is to be used in this machine, you may be purchasing that from a particular supplier, which you've been doing business for a so long period of time. In one moment in time, you find that your machinery get damaged. So when you investigate the reason, you find that your machinery got damaged because of the problem with the components that is supplied by the supplier that you've been doing business with. So in that instance, you may refer to the purchase agreement. The business would look at the purchase agreement, and there they found that the supplier had sold goods without a warranty. If the supplier had sold goods without a warranty, can you claim for the warranty? No, you can't. Because from a legal point of view, the supplier does not have any obligation. If they had sold under a warranty, we could have claimed that particular damage from the supplier. But in this instance, we can't do that. So, what you would do, but anyway, you may communicate that particular matter to the supplier. Then you've been doing business for a so long period of time. So therefore, the supplier would discuss the issue with the management, and then they may come into a kind of thinking that since we are doing business for a so long period of time, we better attend to this particular event. Or in other words, we may compensate our customer for this damage. If they come into such kind of mentality, and if they communicate that to you, if they communicate that to the customer, then what you can do is you can recognize an asset called compensation receivable. So you would be compensated for the damage. So therefore, you can recognize an asset called compensation receivable. In that particular case, it's an asset. You have right for compensation. It's an asset that had came into existence because of a constructive obligation to another party. So that is another way how this right may come into existence. එතකොට rights ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රධාන ක්‍රම කිහිපයක් තියෙනවා. එතනින් එක ප්‍රධාන ක්‍රමයක් විදිහට අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන් contract එකක් නිසා right එකක් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Classic example එක තමයි trade receivables නේ. එතකොට එතන you and the customer there is a contract. එතකොට legislation එකක් හේතු කොටගෙනත් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන් රයිට් එකක්. උදාහරණයක් ගත්තොත් අපි හිතුවොත් අපිට තියෙනවා ට්‍රේඩින් ලයිසන් එකක්. එතකොට මේ ට්‍රේඩින් ලයිසන් එක අපි ගන්න ඕනේ ගවර්න්මන්ට් රිලේටඩ් බොඩි එකකින්. එතකොට එතනදී as a matter of legislation your operating license asset come into existence. ඊට පස්සේ අපි බැලුවොත් අපි ගන්නවා මෝටර් වෙහිකල් එකක් වගේ පර්චේස් කරනවා. එතකොට අපිට ලීගල් ඕනර්ෂිප් එක තියෙනවා. එහෙනම් ලීගල් ඕනර්ෂිප් එකත් අපිට රයිට් එකක් අරගෙන එනවා. එතකොට අපි හිතුවොත් ලීසින් එකක් දාලා මෝටර් වෙහිකල් එකක් ගත්තොත් එතනත් ඇත්තටම අපිට රයිට් එකක් තියෙනවා. right to use the asset by way of a contract. You and the leasing company එක අතර තියෙන්නේ contract එකක්. So that is the other thing. And the right can even come into existence because of the constructive obligation. එතකොට සම්මුතික බැඳීම් හේතු කොටගෙනත් right එකක් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි නිෂ්පාදන ව්‍යාපාරයක් නම් අපි ගාව මැෂිනරි තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේ මැෂිනරි වලට කම්පෝනන්ට්ස් භාවිතා කරන්න ඕන අපි මේ කම්පෝනන්ට්ස් යම්කිසි සප්ලයර් කෙනෙක්ගෙන් ගන්නවා. එතකොට යම්කිසි මොහොතක අපේ මැෂින්ස් වලට ඩැමේජ් වෙනවා. එතකොට අපි හේතුව හොයලා බලපුවාම හේතුව තමයි මේ කම්පෝනන්ට්ස් වල තිබ්බ ඉෂුව එක. එතනදී අපි බලනවා අපේ sales agreement එක අපේ purchase agreement එක මේ supplier ගෙන් භාණ්ඩ ගත්ත. එතනදී අපිට පේනවා අපි භාණ්ඩ මිලට අරන් තියෙන්නේ warranty එකක් යටතේ නෙමෙයි. ඒතර warranty එකක් යටතේ නෙමෙයි නම් අපි භාණ්ඩ මිලට අරන් තියෙන්නේ අපිට කොයින් වෙලාවකවත් මේ damages වලට claim කරන්න බෑ supplier ගෙන්. ඒක තමයි legal situation එක. legal obligation එකක් නැහැ supplier ට. හැබැයි අපි කෝකටත් මේ issue එක supplier ට දැනුම් දෙනවා අපේ machinery damage වුණා කියලා. එතකොට supplier සැලකිල්ලට ගනිවි කාලයක් තිස්සේ ව්‍යාපාර කටයුතු කරා. ඒ නිසා ඒ කට්ටිය supplier management එකත් එක්ක discuss කරයි. කරලා සමහර වෙලාවට අපි හිතමු කාලයක් තිස්සේ ව්‍යාපාර කටයුතු කිරීම තුළ මේ damage එක ගෙවන්න supplier එකඟ වෙනවා. ඒකට ඒ වගේ වෙලාවක මොකක්ද තියෙන්නේ? අන්න obligation එකක් assume කරනවා supplier මොකක්ද? not legal but constructive. constructive obligation එකක් assume කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ මේ management of the supplier මේ decision එක inform කරනවා කස්ටමර්ට කියන්නේ entity එකට. එතකොට entity කන්න ඊ අවස්ථාවේ entity එකට පුළුවන් වෙනවා recognize කරන්න asset එකක් මොකක්ද? compensation receivable කියලා. compensation receivable කියලා. එතකොට අපිට asset right එකක් ආවා. ඒ right එක ආවේ කොහොමද? by way of a constructive obligation to another party. So these are different ways how the rights may come into existence by way of constructive obligation. Now let's move on to the next element. It's the element, it is about income and expenses. Compared to the previous definition, if you take the new definition in line with the definition of assets and liabilities, they have made it very simple yet comprehensive. So the definition has been made very simple. If you look at that, the income is the increase in asset, the decrease in liabilities that result in increase in equity other than those relating to the contribution from holders of equity. The income එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? asset එක සිද්ධ වෙන වැඩිවීමක්, එහෙම නැත්නම් liability එක සිද්ධ වෙන අඩුවීමක් හේතු කරගෙන equity එකේ සිද්ධ වෙන වැඩිවීමක්. හැබැයි ඒක owners ළඟින් ලැබෙන contribution වලින් සිද්ධ වෙන වැඩිවීමක් වෙන්න බැරිලු. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් අපේ තියෙන PP item එකක් revalue කරනවා. අපි හිතමු revaluation gain එකක් එනවා කියලා. What happens? PP asset increases, equity increases. එහෙනම් ඒක අපේ income එකක්. අපේ provision එකක් තියෙනවා. provision එකේ අඩුවීමක් සිද්ධ වෙනවා. මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ? liability එකක් අඩු වුණා. ඒක income එකක් create කරා. ඕන ව්‍යාපාරයට සල්ලි අරගෙන එනවා. cash වැඩි වෙනවා, equity එක වැඩි වෙනවා. ඒක incomeද? නැහැ. because එතන අපිට පේනවා ඒක contribution from the owner. ඒතර ownerගේ contribution එකක් වුණොත් ඒක equity එක වැඩි වුණත් ඒක income එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා තමයි අපි කියන්නේ other than those relating to contribution from holders of equity. ඒතර expense කියන්නේ මේකේ අනිත් පැත්ත. expense එකක් ඇති වෙනවලු decrease in asset, increase in liabilities, result in decrease in equity. Other than distribution to holders of equity. එතකොට අපි ගත්තොත් expense එකක් විදිහට යම්කිසි asset එකක සිද්ධ වෙන අඩුවීමක්. එතකොට අපි ගමු revaluation එකම. එතකොට revaluation loss එකක් එනවා. මොකද වෙන්නේ? PP value එක අඩු වෙනවා. එහෙනම් ඒක expense එකක්. ඒක එක්ස්පෙන්ස් එකක්. ඉක්විටි වල අඩුවීම සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා ඒක අපි එක්ස්පෙන්ස් එකක් විදිහට ගන්නවා. රිවැල්යුේෂන් ලොස් එකක් කියලා අපි කියන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ ඒත් එක්කම ලයබිලිටි එක වැඩිවීමක්. එතකොට කාලච්ඡේදයේ අපි යම්කිසි ප්‍රොවිෂන් එකක් කරනවා. එතකොට compensation for the employeesලට compensation එකක්. එහෙම නැත්නම් customer compensation එකක් මොකක් හරි. එහෙම නැත්නම් product warranty එකක්. එතකොට එතනදි වෙන්නේ මොකක්ද? provision එකක් create වෙනවා, liability එකක් වැඩි වෙනවා. ඒත් එක්කම corresponding expense එකක් එනවා. ඕන ව්‍යාපාරයෙන් සල්ලි අරගෙන යනවා. asset එක අඩු වෙනවා cash, equity එකත් අඩු වෙනවා. හැබැයි ඒක වියදමක් නෙමෙයි. The reason is because it's a distribution to the holders of equity claim. ඒක distribution එකක් එනිසා ඒක ගන්න බෑ අපිට expense එකක් විදියට. ඒ නිසා the each aspect of the definition matters. So you need to define the things in line with the precise definition given. So you need to assess the things in line with the definition that is being given. Now let's take on an activity based on the elements of financial statements. As far as the elements is concerned, the first one, they take the obligation to transfer resources arising due to obtaining a bank loan. So it is pretty obvious. There they talk about an obligation, a present obligation to transfer economic resources. Obviously, liability. Increase in ownership interest by issuance of shares. So it is definitely the equity, the residual interest. It talks about the residual interest. The shares, the issuance of shares, which increase the ownership interest, it is equity. The declaration and payment of dividend to owners, it is what we call the distribution. Distribution is in fact something relating to the equity. So in fact, it's a reduction in equity. So therefore, it is equity. The final one, items characterized by its service potential or future economic benefits. What is that? Items characterized by its service potential or future economic benefit. So it talks about the present economic resource, which has the potential to generate the future economic benefits. So it is potential for future economic benefits. It's asset. So the element is asset. Now we come to the next element, next component of the conceptual framework. We call it recognition. Again, another significantly affected area. So the new conceptual framework has drastically changed the previous definition on recognition. As per the previous definition, we had two criteria. We call it probability criterion and the reliability criterion. That's what we used to have as per the previous conceptual framework. But in the new conceptual framework, we are no longer identifying this probability and reliability. So instead, we have replaced it with the relevance and faithful representation. So if a particular recognition of an asset, liability, income, expense, or equity, if it results in the relevant information and if it can be, it can provide a faithful representation, that must be the criteria what you should consider for the recognition. The recognition in the sense it is the process of capturing an item that meets the definition of the elements of financial statement for the inclusion in the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income and statement of financial position. අපි recognition එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? statement of profit or loss එකේ සහ statement of financial position එකේ ඉදිරිපත් කිරීම සඳහා present කිරීම සඳහා අපි තොරතුරු capture කිරීමකට තමයි recognition එකක් කියන්නේ. එතකොට අලුත් conceptual framework එකට අනුව යම්කිසි item of financial statement, or we call it the elements of financial statement, අපි recognize කරන්නේ ඒ recognition එක තුළ relevant සහ faithful representation එකක්, ඒ recognize කිරීම තුළ යම්කිසි financial information එකක් relevant වෙනවා නම් සහ ඒ financial information එක faithfully represent කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් කියන කාරණා දෙක මත. An asset or liability is recognized only if such recognition provide users of financial statement with useful information. तर මේකට ප්‍රධානම හේතුවක් විදිහට මේ recognition criteria වෙනස් කරන්න බලපුවහු one main reason could be this is to keep more in line with the objective of financial reporting. So in the objective of financial reporting, we made that we need to provide the financial information that is useful to the resource providers in making decisions regarding providing resources. Then we identify a particular information to be useful. It should have to have the fundamental qualities of relevance and faithful representation. So therefore, we want to keep more in line with the objective and the qualitative characteristics. So therefore, we have introduced the qualitative characteristics to this recognition criterion. So we have replaced the existing recognition criterion with this relevance and faithful representation. As long as a particular financial information can provide a relevant information, and if it can be faithfully represented, that is an information what we should recognize. So in that, the probability may or may not relevant. The probability may or may not matter, right? So if example and see how this recognition criteria works. Let's say that you have a PP item, right? Let's say that it's a land and building. Now what you are going to do, you are going to revalue that particular land and building. So you may refer to the market value of the properties in the particular area on which your land and building is located, and also the values of the nearby lands and the nearby buildings. So referring to that, you may come up with a particular valuation. In that, would that particular information be relevant? So if you provide the fair value information on assets, the fair value information on land and building, yes, it's a relevant information. Then what about the faithful representation? Can you faithfully represent that? So if you have carefully applied the guidelines that is being provided in the fair value accounting standard, that is SLFRS 13, you will be learning that in the future under this course. So if you apply the guidelines that is being given in the SLFRS 13, that is fair value measurement standard, and if you have done the revaluation properly, then the faithful representation is there. So the relevance is there, the faithful representation is there. So therefore, you can recognize this land and building at its fair value. Then on the other hand, let's take another example. Let's say that you have a kind of brand. You've been doing business for so long period of time. So as a matter of that, you have a strong brand. So let's say that it's a Coca-Cola company or something, or Google. So they would be having brands which is having a value of millions or even billions. So I would say, so it is having values of billions. In that particular case, what do you think? If you provide that such kind of information, would it be relevant? If you provide such kind of information? Yes, in fact, it is relevant. If you can provide information on the brand value, so it would definitely helpful for the investors. So the relevance is there. Then the question, can you faithfully represent that? Can you measure them? Or can you come up with a kind of more neutral, reliable measurement on that? So can you agree on a particular valuation? And that is questionable. So in that particular case, though the information is relevant, you can't faithfully represent that. So thereby, you should not recognize the internally generated brands. You should not recognize because the faithful representation is not there. So the measurement uncertainty is there. And another example, if you take For example, if you take the kind of human resources that you have, that is in the sense the employees that you have in your business. If you consider about these employees, isn't it an asset to you? So in fact, it's a present economic resource. So it has the potential to generate the economic benefits in the future. So therefore, it's meet the definition. The human resource or the employees that you have in your organization, they meet the definition of asset. And if you provide the information on these employees, on this human capital, would it be a relevant information? Obviously, it is a relevant information. That information is relevant. But can you come up with a suitable measurement for that? Can you measure them with reliability? Or we call it, can you measure them reliably? Yeah. So that particular feature is missing. You can't reliably measure the things. You can't reliably measure your your human capital. So in that particular case, again, because of the faithful representation, the measurement uncertainty affected that. So because of that, you can't recognize the human capital. So likewise, we are no longer referring to the probability and probability criteria and the reliability criteria. Instead, we are referring to relevance and faithful representation. So අලුත් conceptual framework එකේ වෙච්ච significant change එකක් මේ relevance සහ faithful representation කියන එක හඳුන්වා දීම recognition criteria විදිහට එතනදී අපි කියනවා යම්කිසි information එකක් relevant සහ faithfully represent කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒ information එක අපි recognize කරන්න ඕන කියලා. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපේ ව්‍යාපාරයේ තියෙන land and building එකක් අපි revalue කරනවා. ඒතකොට revalue කිරීමේදී අපිට පුළුවන් nearby lands වල තියෙන සහ nearby buildings වල තියෙන values ගන්න. ඒ වගේම ඒ land අපේ land සහ building locate වෙලා තියෙන area එකේ තියෙන average market prices ගන්න. ඒතකොට මේ වගේ information අරගෙන අපිට land and building එක revalue කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතකොට අපේ තියෙන land and building revalue කරත් එතන relevance එක තියෙනවද? ඒතර ඇත්තටම අපි current values ලබා දෙනවා. අපේ financial statements වලින් current values තමයි දෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් මේ information එක ගොඩක් relevant. ඒතර එතන faithful representation එක තියෙනවද? ඒතර අපි SLFRS 13 fair value standard එකේ තියෙන guidelines වලට අනුකූලව නම් fair value එක determine කරේ. එතකොට faithful representation එකකුත් සිද්ධ වෙනවා. එහෙමනම් අපිට පුළුවන් land සහ building fair value වලට පෙන්වන්න. relevance සහ faithful representation is there. දැන් අනිත් පැත්තෙන් අපි ගත්තොත් උදාහරණයක් අපි ව්‍යාපාරයේ තියෙන brand එකක්. ඒතර අපි හිතමු Coca-Cola company එකක් එහෙම නැත්නම් Google company එකක්. ඒතර මේ companies වල brand එකේ value එක ගත්තොත් millions. ඒතර අපි දන්නවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි internally generated brands හඳුනාගන්නේ නැහැ financial statements වල. ඒතර ඒකට හේතුව මොකක්ද බැලුවොත්? දැන් අපිට පේනවා ඒ වගේ information එකක් අපි දුන්නොත් ඒක relevant වෙයිද investors ලට? brand value එක දුන්නොත් definitely if you provide information on the brand value, that information is really relevant. It is highly relevant. It is highly relevant. Namuth, can we measure them with a kind of certainty? With some certainty. යම්කිසි නිශ්චිතභාවයකින් අපිට මේ වත්කම measure කරන්න පුළුවන්. Can we measure them with some certainty? That is the question. අපිට මේ brand එක යම්කිසි නිශ්චිතභාවයකින් measure කරන්න බෑ. Measurement uncertainty is there. So therefore, the faithful representation is not there. Because of that, you can't recognize the internally generated brands. Similarly, if you take asset like human capital, ව්‍යාපාරයක ඉන්න staff එක ගැන consider කරොත් ඇත්තටම it's a resource. The human capital is a resource. So අපේ human capital එක ගැන information දුන්නොත් would it be relevant? Definitely. It's a highly relevant information. The investors would really value that. Then, can we measure the value of this human capital with some reliability, with some certainty? That is the problem. The measurement uncertainty is there. So therefore, you can't faithfully represent that. So because of that, again, you can't recognize the human capital as your one of the assets. So that is how the relevance and faithful representation works. Now we come to the measurement aspect. So far we've been discussing about the prescription, but when it comes to the measurement, it's a kind of description. As per the new conceptual framework, they would identify two categories of measurement basis. On one hand, they still believe in the historical cost. In fact, the historical cost is still there. In the financial statement, historical cost is there. Ne? So, for example, if you take a PP, so PP should still at the initial recognition measured at the cost. So, the historical cost application is there. Even for the liabilities, yes, in most of the cases for the liabilities even the historical cost is there. So, for example, if you obtain a loan, so you would recognize at the consideration what you had received, consideration that you had received after taking into account the transaction cost. So the historical cost application is there. But on the other hand, the new conceptual framework is giving more prominence to the current values, giving more prominence to the current values. Under these current values, we are talking about three types of current value. One is called the fair value, the other one is called the value in use, the final one, it is the current cost. So in fact, we'll be taking these things into detailed discussion in the future lectures. But at this point in time, if I'm to give a kind of just kind of understanding, the fair value means it's a market price. In simple terms, the fair value means it's a market price. So in more technical way, you can say that the fair value will reflect the market participants' current expectation about the future cash flows. The market participants' current expectation about the future cash flows is what we call the fair value. So therefore, fair value is a market based measurement. It's a market based measurement. Whereas if you take the value in use and the current cost, in that we call them entity specific measures. The value in use, especially we'll be discussing them under the impairment of asset. The value in use is basically, if you take a particular asset, how you can realize the future economic benefit is basically in two ways. If you take any asset, you can either sell that asset immediately or you can continue to use that particular asset. If you continue to use that particular asset, it will be giving the benefit in the future. Say for an example, if you take a machinery item, so if you continue to use that particular machinery, probably it will help to generate some output in the next throughout the remaining useful life, and so therefore it's a kind of cash flow in the future. So if you consider the net cash flow which is generated by this particular machinery in the future, and if you get them discounted by the suitable cost of capital, you can establish the present value of that future cash flows. So that is the value in use. So therefore, it's a kind of entity specific measurement. So because you are using the inputs that is relating to a particular entity. And similarly, when it comes to the current cost, so the fulfillment value, so as far as asset is concerned, the value in use is applicable. As far as liability is concerned, it is the fulfillment value. So you may consider about the future cash outflows and you may discount them and you may establish a value today, and that is the fulfillment value of a liability. And similarly, when it comes to the current cost, so again, this is something that we would be taking into discussion under the what you call the PPE. In the PPE revaluation, you're going to learn something called depreciated replacement cost. In that, you are considering about the current cost of a particular asset item. Again, it's a kind of entity specific measurement. So in this particular case, an example for this could be you are going to revalue a particular asset that you have, but when you are looking at the market price for this particular asset, you don't have a market to sell that particular asset. So especially, let's say it's a kind of particular machinery item. So in that you can't sell them in a market, and you can't generate the fair value. So in that particular case, what you would do, you would approach the manufacturer of that particular machinery, and then you would get the price from that particular manufacturer. How much would this cost to me if I am to get a similar machine done today? How much would it cost? Then they would say a machine of this nature would cost this much today, but you are having a kind of machine which is used for a particular period of time. So therefore, having it the value of the brand new machine, you may do some adjustments and thereby you may generate the value, and that is called the current cost. And again, it's an entity specific value. So it's about the current cost. You'll be discussing them in detail in the future lectures. तर අපි measurement සම්බන්ධයෙන් කතා කිරීමේදී ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් measurement basis දෙකක් identify කරනවා. International Accounting Standard Board එක අපි කියනවා historical cost එක සහ current values කියන එක. එතකොට මේ historical cost එකේ තියෙන්නේ මොනවද? මේක අපිට ගොඩක් familiar. එතකොට asset එකක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් නම් අපි PP වලදී historical cost application එකක් දකිනවානේ. The asset, the PP item should initially be recognized at its cost. So it's a cost application. And liabilities, well, if you obtain a loan today, so you may be recognizing them at the consideration receipt plus or minus the transaction cost. So therefore, the net proceed, it is about the cost for a liability. Then similarly, if you come to the other kind of valuation, අපි කියන එක current values. The IASB එක new conceptual framework එක දැන් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට rely කරන්නේ current values. The current values කියන්නේ the market, the values in the present environment, the values that is relevant for the present environment. ඒ තුල අපි values තුනක් ගැන කතා කරනවා, fair value, value in use සහ current cost කියලා. ඒතකොට fair value එකක් කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම market price එකක්. ඒතර උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපේ තියෙන වත්කමක් අද වික්කොත් අපිට කීයක් හම්බෙයිද? market එකේ වික්කොත් කීයක් හම්බෙයිද කියන information එක. So therefore we call it fair value is a market based measurement. ඒතර අනාගතේ අපි මේවා discuss කරනවා. So it's a market based measure. So value in use කියන්නේ අපි ගාව තියෙන වත්කමක් අපි අකණ්ඩව භාවිතා කරනවා කියලා හිතුවොත් ඒ වත්කමින් අනාගතයේ ජෙනරේට් කරන benefits අපි discount කරලා ගත්තොත් අද value එක. ඒතර ඒකට තමයි අපි value in use කියන්නේ. එහෙනම් ඒක අපි කියනවා ගොඩක් entity specific value එකක්. මොකද entity එකේ තියෙන information base කරගෙන තමයි අපි මේවා forecast කරේ cash flows ටික, අනාගත benefits ටික. ඒ වගේම entity එකට suitable වෙන cost of capital එකක් අරගෙන discount කරේ. එහෙනම් එතනදී අපි ගත්තේ entity එකට specific information නිසා අපි ඒක entity specific කියලා කියනවා. ඒතර fulfillment value එකක් කියන්නේ liability එකට අදාළ වෙන දෙයක්. එතකොට මේ liabilities වල අනාගතයේ ගෙවන්න තියෙන මුදල් ප්‍රවාහයන් ටික සැලකිල්ලට අරගෙන ඒක discount කරලා අද value එක establish කරොත් ඒක තමයි fulfillment value. It is relating to the liabilities. එතකොට current cost එකක් කියන්නේ මේක ඇත්තටම අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නවා depreciated replacement cost විදිහට PPE වල revaluation වලදී. එතකොට මේ method එක අපි භාවිතා කරන්නේ යම් කිසි වත්කමකට PP item එකට market value එකක් නැත්තම්. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට machinery item එකක් තියෙනවා. අපිට ඒක revalue කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒතර කරන්න විදියක් නැහැ. market values නැහැ. එහෙනම් අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් මේ machine එක හදන manufacturerට කතා කරලා මේ machine එක අද හැදුවොත් කීයක් වගේ යයිද කියලා information එක ගන්න. How much would it cost if I am to get similar machine done today? එතකොට මේ යම්කිසි valuation එකක් අපිට දෙයි. හැබැයි ඒක අපි දන්නවා brand new machine එකකට. හැබැයි අපි ගාව තියෙන කාලයක් භාවිතා කරපු machine එකක්. ඒ අපි යම් adjustments කරලා අර දුන්න value එකට manufacturer දුන්න value එකට අපි value එකක් establish කරා. ඒක තමයි අපි කියන්නේ current cost එක කියලා. ඒතකොට ඒකත් ඇත්තටම entity specific value එකක් වෙනවා. So these items would be discussed in detail in the future studies. Now we are coming to another or the seventh component of the conceptual framework. We call it presentation and disclosure. When it comes to this presentation and disclosure, as per the new conceptual framework, they have put more emphasis on, or I would say that one of the remarkable features is that it talks about the income and expenses, the presentation of the income and expenses the most. So it focuses much on the presentation of income and expenses. As far as asset liability equity is concerned, no significant changes Still we are going by the current and non-current classification, and even the equity presentation, no changes. But when you come to the statement of profit or loss, they are proposing a change that may become applicable in the near future. The significant change what they are proposing is that they are no longer ready to use the term the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Instead, they are proposing a term, we call it statement of financial performance. So rather than referring to the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, we call it the statement of financial performance. That is one of the significant changes what they are proposing. Then in the statement of financial performance, there we can have statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income statement. So as far as the presentation of this statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income is concerned, they say that if you wish, you can present the profit or loss as a single statement and other comprehensive income as another statement. Or otherwise, you can present the statement of profit or loss and statement of other comprehensive income in a single statement, that is the statement of financial performance. That is the most remarkable change what they would propose. And further, it highlights that in principle, all income and expenses are classified and included in the statement of profit or loss. Principally, if you consider about the income and expenses, the 90% of the income and 90% of the expenses would go to the statement of profit or loss. But there can be some exceptional circumstances where the International Accounting Standards Board may decide to exclude them from the statement of profit or loss and include them in the statement of other comprehensive income. So this is simply because their position is that the position of the ISB is that the board may make such a decision when doing so would result in a statement of profit or loss providing more relevant information or a more faithful representation. So මෙතන basically කතා කරනවා presentations are disclosure chapter එකේ conceptual framework එකේ ප්‍රධාන emphasis එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා income සහ expenses present කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන්. ඒතර එතනදී suggest කරන එක ප්‍රධාන වෙනස්කමක් තියෙනවා. අනාගතයේ අපි මේ statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income කියන term එක වෙනුවට ඒක replace වෙනවා කියනවා statement of financial performance. So as this is statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income will show the statement financial performance, so therefore they are coming up with a new term for that. It is the statement of financial performance. Then as far as the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income is concerned, they say that the entities have the option to present the profit or loss statement and statement of other comprehensive income separate statements දෙකක් විදිහට present කරන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් statement of financial performance කියලා එක statement එකක් අරගෙන ඒකේ තියෙන ප්‍රධාන කොටස් දෙකක් විදිහට statement of profit or loss සහ statement of other comprehensive income එක හඳුනා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියනවා. ඒ දෙකම emphasize කරනවා අපි income සහ expenses in principle ඔක්කොම income සහ expenses අපි අඳුරගන්නේ statement of profit or loss. 90ක් income 90ක් expenses අපි statement of profit or loss identify කරනවා. නමුත් සමහර අවස්ථා තියෙනවා අපි දකිනවා income සහ expenses resulting from the change in the assets and liabilities අපි identify කරනවා statement of other comprehensive income. ඒතර එතනදී International Accounting Standards Board එක පැහැදිලි කරනවා ඇයි අපි සමහරක් items මේ other comprehensive income එකට ගෙනියන්නේ. ඒකට ප්‍රධාන හේතුව තමයි ඒ items අපි present කරන්න උත්සාහ කරොත් statement of profit or loss එකේ ඒක තුලින් relevant සහ faithful representation of the financial information වලට බලපෑමක් ලක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඒ නිසා තමයි අපි other comprehensive income එක introduce කරලා එතෙන්ට සමහරක් income සහ expenses resulting from the change in the current values of assets and liabilities include කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ. The board may make such a decision when doing so would result in a statement of profit or loss providing more relevant information or more faithful representation. ඒ නිසා තමයි මේ other comprehensive income එකක් හඳුනාගෙන තියෙන්නේ කියන එක පැහැදිලි කරනවා. So it is about the summary of the significant changes what they had introduced in the new conceptual framework. Then we are coming to the eighth element or the final element of the conceptual framework. We call it the concept of capital and capital maintenance. So when it comes to this capital maintenance and the capital concept, basically we can define this capital in two perspectives. We can define capital from a financial perspective or the physical capital perspective. So when it comes to this financial perspective, in fact, that is what we are used to do. So in the general purpose financial reporting, we are applying this financial uh, perspective for the capital definition. So under that, the financial capital mean necessarily the net assets or the equity. So the financial capital කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? ව්‍යාපාරයක තියෙන net assets සහ equity කියන එක. ඒක තමයි ඇත්තටම අපි general purpose financial statements වලින් කතා කරන්නේ. Whereas the capital can be defined even in terms of the physical capital. So the physical capital අපි කියනවා productive capacity of an entity. Productive capacity of an entity. So entity එකේ තියෙන operating capacity එකට තමයි අපි physical capital කියලා කියන්නේ. අපි manufacturing entity එකක් නම් අපිට කොච්චර output එකක් generate කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියන කාරණා. ඒතර මේ financial capital වලට ආවහම අපි basically consider කරනවා invested capital කියන approach එකකින්. ඒතර financial අපි general purpose financial statements වල ගොඩක් වෙලාවට භාවිතා කරන්නේ මේ approach එක. capital එක financial capital perspective එකකින් explain කරනවා. එතන තියෙන invested capital. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි යම්කිසි කාල පරිච්ඡේදයක් ආරම්භයේ අපේ තියෙන net assets තියෙනවා. එතකොට ඒ net assets අපි කොහොමද අරගෙන තියෙන්නේ? Simply the asset minus the liabilities. ඒක තමයි net assets. එහෙම නැත්නම් equity එක කියන්නේ. ඒක තමයි අපි invest කරපු capital එක. එහෙම නැත්නම් තවදුරටත් ගිහිලා අවශ්‍ය නම් මේ invested capital කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම inflation effect එකත් එක්ක තියෙන දෙයක් නේ. ඒතර යම්කිසි කාල පරිච්ඡේදයක් ආරම්භයේ හෝ අවසානයේ අපි net assets asset minus liabilities කියලා compute කරනවා නම් එතන the inflation effect එක තියෙනවා. For the current the financial information or the rupee values would subject to inflation. But if you decide to think about it from a invested purchasing power, or if you need to do some adjustment for this inflation and if you want to get the real values, and that is what we call the financial capital from a invested purchasing power basis. එතකොට අපි කිව්වා දැන්ට තියෙන financial information එහෙම නැත්නම් asset minus liabilities කියලා generate කරන net asset යම්කිසි කාල පරිච්ඡේදයක අවසානයේ හෝ ආරම්භයේදී ඒතර ඒකේ inflation එක තියෙනවා. ඒතර අපිට පුළුවන් අවශ්‍ය නම් මේ inflation effect එක ඉවත් කරලත් බලන්න financial capital එක. ඒතකොට inflation effect එක ඉවත් කරන්නේ කොහොමද? අපි inflation effect එක discount කරලා ඉවත් කරනවා. ඒතකොට එතනින් අපි එනවා invested purchasing power කියන aspect එක. නමුත් මේක අපිට ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් අදාළ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් වැඩිදුර කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. මේවා advanced studies වලදී කතා කරයි. දැනට අපි කතා කරන්නේ just net asset සම්බන්ධයෙන්. අපි ගණනය කරන්න පුරුදු වෙච්ච විදිහට කාලච්ඡේදයක් ආරම්භයේ තියෙන net assets, කාලච්ඡේදයක් අවසානයේ තියෙන net assets කියන කාරණාව. ඒ වගේම තමයි physical capital කියන එකත් ගොඩක් applicable නැහැ. මොකද අපි financial accounting වලදී financial reporting වලදී physical capitals වලට වඩා prominence එක දෙන්නේ financial capital වලට. ඇත්තටම financial capitalම තමයි අපේ focus එක. Now we are coming to the concept of capital maintenance. What is that? How do you can claim under financial perspective, financial capital perspective, how you can claim that you have maintained the capital over a particular period of time? So මේ financial capital maintenance concept එකට අනුව කොහොමද අපිට claim කරන්න පුළුවන් අපි financial capital maintain කරා කියලා? So it is a very simple thing. All what we have to do is, if we can show that during the year if we had generated a profit, and that is where an entity can claim that they have maintained the capital, right? Instead, if they had made a loss during the period, then they have destroyed the capital. So in order to maintain the capital, what they do have to do, they have to generate profit. As long as they generate profit, we call the capital is maintained. So instead, if they make losses, then the capital is destroyed. For example, if you take here we can see the profit formula is there, no? So how you can generate the profit? Let's say in a particular period, at the end of the period, you have net assets of say 8 million. You have net assets of 8 million. At the beginning of the period, you have net assets of, let's say, 5 million. Then you can see over the period, net assets has been changed by 3 million, no? And let's further say, during the period, owner had introduced rupees 3 million to the business. And also, the owner had taken rupees 2 million from the business during the period. You know, everything is relating to the equity. Equity එකට අදාළයි සියලුම දේවල් නේ. Then if you try to figure out in this, if you try to figure out profit in this scenario, so how do you can ensure that the profit is there? The net assets at the beginning of the period is there. It is 5 million. You take that 5 million. Then you add the contribution 3 million. Then you deduct the drawings 2 million. And now if you see how much is the value, then let's see whether it equals to the closing net assets. The opening net assets is 5 million. You add the contribution 3 million, 8 million. You deduct 2 million distribution, drawings. So you have 6 million. But the net assets at the end of the period shows that it is 7 million. Then how this net asset had become 7 million? It is simply because during the period the entity had made a profit of 1 million. So therefore it is simply the profit equation will help you to identify whether there is a profit. So if you are given the information about the net assets at the beginning of the period, at the end of the period, together with the contribution and distribution to the owners, then you know how to identify whether the capital is maintained or not. As long as you make profits, the capital is maintained. So that is the case under the financial capital maintenance. In fact, this is what we consider in general purpose financial reporting. And another way of explaining the capital maintenance is from a financial capital maintenance concept. In that, all what you would worry about, whether you can do the same number of units that you could did at the beginning of the period, or if you can do the same thing at the end of the period, then you can say you have maintained the capital under the physical capital maintenance. Say for an example, you are a manufacturing entity. Being a manufacturing entity at the beginning of the period, you may be able to do 100,000 units. Then when come to at the end of the period, if you can do like 120,000 units, then we can say that you have maintained the capital. So you have maintained the capacity. The capacity had not been destroyed. Then if you consider about situation like this, if you consider about situation where at the beginning of the period you could do 100,000 units, then at the end of the period you could do like 80,000 units, what is the case? So then you can see that, so you have destroyed the capital. You can't do, you don't have the productive capacity which it was there at the beginning of the period. It is not there in the end of the period. Even let's say that at the beginning of the period you have did 100,000 units. At the end of the period you do 100,000 units, the same number of units. Still you do not make a loss in terms of the physical capital, so therefore the capital is maintained. Even if you do not make an increase, if you can at least maintain what it was there at the beginning of the period, yes, so it seems that yes, you are in safe hand. You have maintained the capital. So the capital of an entity is maintained if it has as much as the capital at the end of the period. එතකොට කාලච්ඡේදයක් අවසානයේ තියෙන කැපිටල් එක ආරම්භයේ තියෙන කැපිටල් එකට සමාන නම් ඒත් අපි කැපිටල් එක මේන්ටේන් කරනවා. එතකොට ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් කැපිටල් මේන්ටෙනන්ස් එකේදී මම කිව්වා ප්‍රොෆිට් එකක් තියෙනවා නම් අනිවාර්යයෙන් මේක ඔබ්වියස් කැපිටල් එකක් මේන්ටේන් වෙලා තියෙනවා කියලා. එතකොට සමහර අවස්ථාවල අපිට so at least the net asset at the beginning of the period, at the end of the period පවත්ව ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒත් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් capital එකක් maintain වුණා කියලා. As long as we do not make losses, අපි loss make නොකරන තාක්කල් අපි in a safe hand. So therefore we can be in a situation like break even, අපි profits උත් නැහැ, loss උත් නැහැ, contribution උත් නැහැ, distribution උත් නැහැ. කාලච්ඡේදයේ ආරම්භයේ 5 million තිබ්බ, කාලච්ඡේදයේ අවසානයේත් එහෙනම් 5 millionම තියෙනවා. එහෙනම් ඒත් capital එක maintain වෙලා. හැබැයි profit එකක් තියෙනවා නම් අපි දන්නවා අනිවාර්යෙන්ම ඒක capital එකක් maintain වෙනවා. අපි contribution සහ distribution consider කරාට පස්සේ profit එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒක maintain වෙනවා, right? So it's about the capital maintenance. Now we are coming to the, having discussed the components of conceptual framework, finally we are coming to the benefits of conceptual framework. So this is something straightforward, you can read and understand, but just to take you through, as we've been discussing so far, if there is a conceptual framework, the development of the accounting standard would be consistent and logical. So it is one of the advantage. So in fact, that is the purpose of a conceptual framework. And also, it will increase the international compatibility of accounting standards. So when the accounting standards is developed based on a one conceptual framework, which is accepted by the universe, which is accepted at the international level, then the benefit is that there would be a compatibility in accounting standards. In fact, when it comes to this conceptual framework of International Accounting Standards Board, by now there are like 166 countries which has endorsed this conceptual framework. So thereby, consequently, they would be having IFRSs in their territories. So at the moment, there are like 166 countries who had adopted the IFRSs. So including Sri Lanka. So මේ වෙනකොට countries 166ක් ලෝකේ endorse කරලා තියෙනවා, පිළි අරගෙන තියෙනවා මේ ISB conceptual framework. ඒතකොට රටවල් 166ක දැන්ටමත් තියෙනවා IFRS. එතකොට ඒ කියන්නේ conceptual framework එක applicable වෙනවා for all these countries. ඒ නිසා international compatibility එකක් තියෙනවා accounting standards. So one set of accounting standards for the whole world. And it will enhance the communication between standard setters and their constituent. So when you are based on same kind of thinking, when you based on the same theoretical foundation, the communication would be more meaningful. So හැමෝම එකම thinking එක නම් ඉන්නේ, හැමෝම එකම conceptual framework එක, හැමෝම එකම theoretical underpinning එක නම් ඉන්නේ, communication between accounting standard setters would be meaningful. When we are our Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, when they try to communicate with the chartered accountants in Australia, the chartered accountants in New Zealand, the chartered accountants in UK, so it will be providing a level playing field. Everyone would be in the same set of thinking. The communication is meaningful. The development of accounting standards is more logical because the broad issues in financial reporting has been addressed by the conceptual framework. So therefore, the accounting standards is more economical. Conceptual framework එකෙන් අපි කිව්වා broad financial reporting related issues address කරනවා කියලා. ඒ නිසා accounting standards develop කරන්න යන එක ලොකු cost එකක් ඇතුව වෙන වැඩක් නෙමෙයි. ඒක cost effective task එකක්. ඒ නිසා ඒක අපි කියනවා it become more economical. And we emphasize on the decision usefulness. We always talk about providing financial information useful to resource providers. So therefore, we emphasize much on the decision usefulness. And also it reduces the need for additional standard when conceptual framework covers a particular issue. So යම්කිසි ගැටලුවකට අදාළව conceptual framework එක address කරනවා නම් එතන accounting standard එකක development එක අවශ්‍යතාවය නැති වෙන්නත් පුළුවන් නේ. In practically we can't have the accounting standards are readily available for all the financial transactions, all the financial transactions. So therefore, there can be some transaction where there's no particular accounting standard, but still you can manage the accounting of that based on the conceptual framework. So conceptual framework එකේ තියෙන guidance වලට අනුව යම්කිසි transaction එකකට අපිට account කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි. ඒකට අදාළ accounting standard එකක් නැත්නම් අපිට පුළුවන් වෙයි conceptual framework එකේ මත පදනම් වෙලා account කරන්න. So those are the benefits. And in the limitations, we have the smaller organization may feel overburdened by reporting requirement. The conceptual framework, based on the conceptual framework, the IFRSs are developed. In our case, we have the SLFRSs. The application of this SLFRS, which is based on the conceptual framework, would be costly exercise for the small and medium scale organization. So therefore, that's why we call it The small organization may feel overburdened by the reporting requirement. So depending on the conceptual framework, accounting standards are developed, and those accounting standards has to be applied by the organization irrespective of their size. If that happens, the small organization may feel overburdened. And when it comes to this conceptual framework for financial reporting, it focuses on the financial information. As I mentioned earlier, their focus is about the economic. Then what about the environmental information? What about the social information? What is the social implication of doing business? What are the environmental implication of doing business? එතකොට ව්‍යාපාර කටයුතු කිරීමේදී economic transactions විතරක් නෙමෙයි තියෙන financial transactions විතරක් නෙමෙයි අපි environmental related aspect එකක් තියෙනවා ඒ වගේම social aspect එකක් තියෙනවා ඒ නිසා අපිට මේ environmental related දේවල් communicate කරන්න වෙයි ඒ වගේම social related දේවල් communicate කරන්න ඕනේ. නමුත් conceptual framework එක entertain කරන්නේ නැහැ මේ social සහ economic social සහ environmental related information. That it represent the codification of existing practice. As far as conceptual framework is concerned, we expected an ideal state or we expect a perfect state. But when we look at how this conceptual framework works, it simply codifies or it simply record the existing practice. So it is another limitation. The conceptual framework එකකින් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ perfect state එකක්. ඒකට ඒකෙන් සෑම වෙලාවකම prescription දෙනවා. objective එක මොකක් විය යුතුද? qualitative characteristics මොනවද? recognition මොනවද? measurement මොනවද? මේ වගේ විවිධ ideal state එකක් ගැන තමයි කතා කරන්නේ. හැබැයි ප්‍රායෝගිකව මේ සිද්ධ වෙන දේවල් බලපුවාම ප්‍රායෝගිකව conceptual framework එක evolve වෙන ආකාරය බලපුවාම අපිට පේනවා සෑම වෙලාවකම conceptual framework එක evolve වෙන්නේ මේ existing practice එකේ තියෙන problems උත් එක්ක. existing practice එකේ තියෙන problems වලට solutions විදිහට තමයි conceptual framework එක evolve වෙන්නේ. So that is what the codification of existing practice. So those are the limitations of conceptual framework. So with that note, we'll finish our lecture on conceptual framework.